Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of our Deep Cuts from Classic Album series. I know I said I wasn't going to do another one this week before my son's wedding, but I figured I'd squeeze one more in. You never know, there might be another one. But anyway, today's discussion is going to be centered on 1977's Point of No Return by Kansas. There's a reason I picked this one now is because the band is in the middle of doing their 40th anniversary tour in support of this album, so I figured it'd be a good time to kind of take a look at it, but specifically to talk about the songs on the album that really weren't the hits. So did a little bit of history of this album. So it was released in the summer of 1977, went on to sell 4 million copies. Okay, and I think in the Billboard Top 100 here, or Top 200 here in the U.S., the album actually made it to a peak position at number 4. So really good seller for the band. Of course, Dust in the Wind was the huge seller, a top 10 radio hit. And they also released Point of No Return as a single. That did fairly well. Portrait He Knew also was released as a single. That didn't do as well, but that's more of kind of like a deep album track that we're going to talk a little bit about. But it's mainly the two big singles, the title track and Dust in the Wind, were enormous hits for the band, especially Dust in the Wind. So, and in fact, that along with Carry On Wayward Son from the previous album, Left Overture, are generally regarded by most casual fans as probably the only 2 or 3, if you include Point of No Return, songs that most people know of the band. But if you're a regular fan, you've been a fan for a long time, you know they've got a lot more than just those radio staples. So what about this album? So yes, this was a huge, Left Overture and Point of No Return, easily the 2 biggest album sellers in the band's history. And each one, start to finish, pretty much perfect albums. They're 2, most known albums, arguably Kansas from their first album through probably to Monolith. Stellar albums, each and every one of them. But this album, we've got some great tunes on here that just don't get enough mention. And there's a lot more to this album than Dust in the Wind and the title track. Of course, the title track is great. Really good song. Then the next is Paradox, which is just a fantastic slice of American progressive rock. It's got Kansas always had a lot of different elements to their music. They had the obviously the 70s British style prog in there, US kind of classic rock or corporate rock, whatever you want to call it at the time. Very catchy hard rock music. And then with the violin, of course, you had that little dose of classical and jazz. Just a really interesting band. Paradox, another great tune. That led into The Spider, which is one of the few instrumentals that this band ever did. In fact, God, how many other instrumentals did they do? Off the top of my head, I don't recall too many, if any at all. But anyway, a really great song that showcased especially the keyboard skills, right, of Mr. Steve Walsh and Kerry Livgren. Some really amazing stuff there for all you fans of Yes and ELP. Totally in that vein. Next after that, of course, Portrait He Knew, a really catchy song, and for my money, one of the highlights of this album. Just a driving rocker with a great hook, great guitar work from Rich Williams and Kerry Livgren, stellar vocals, just a typical amazing Kansas song. And then the closing song of side 1, on the LP at least, is my absolute favorite song on this album, which is Closet Chronicles. That is, to me, the kind of real epic sounding total prog track on this album. Haunting lyrics and vocals. I always loved, especially in the early lineup of this band, the kind of dual vocal attack of Steve Walsh and Robbie Steinhardt, the violin player. Just the 2 of them work so well together. They both had great voices. They both sounded very different from each other, which was really cool. I was reading a remark from, I don't remember where it was recently, from a writer that was mentioning an old, I think, Rolling Stone review, perhaps from the 70s, right around this time, where they said that nobody in this band really stands out much as instrumentalist, but together they create a lot of magic. That's pretty true, although I think you'll find that most of these guys were pretty much virtuoso musicians, but they never kind of stood out as such. Kerry Livgren, in addition to being an amazing lyricist, a kick-ass guitar player, and a really good keyboard player as well. Rich Williams, obviously a great guitar player. Steve Walsh, phenomenal singer, really great keyboard player, especially Hammond organ. Okay, Robbie Steinhardt, wonderful violin player, and of course Phil Ehart on drums. You know, just great musicians. Of course, Dave Hope on bass, of course, very solid bass player. So really good instrumental skills of the band. Next tune, Lightning's Hand. Really hard rocker for the band, and just had these great guitar and violin. Fantastic song. How can you not get fired up by that song? It's got a great Robbie vocal on it. Fantastic tune. Then, of course, you got Dust in the Wind. We all know about Dust in the Wind, so I'm not going to talk about it here. A wonderful song. We probably all heard it a million times, but anyway. Sparks of the Tempest is another really cool, kind of different rocker for this album. Again, another really great Robbie lead vocal, but also Steve sings as well. Some really good musical passages in this song, a very majestic kind of tune. And I always thought that Sparks of the Tempest kind of was the precursor to the next album, Monolith. There's some similarities between some of the tracks on that album and that particular song. Nobody's Home, another kind of heartfelt, tender ballad. Good tune, not one of my favorites on the album, but good song, great melodies, great vocals. Yeah, Steve just at his top of his game. And then Hopelessly Human. Another one of those real kind of haunting, majestic, melodic, atmospheric tunes from the band that kind of showcased everything that they did so well. So as a whole, the album has like a little bit of everything. Yes, it's progressive rock. I always felt that Kansas was probably the ultimate U.S. progressive rock band. Some of you may say Happy the Man, maybe a couple others, but for me, Kansas is always number one in my book. They did a lot of that on this album, but obviously there's some commercial stuff on this album, which helped catapult it to become the biggest seller in their discography. But great mix of like hard rockers and the prog stuff, some more like kind of ballady type of things, and just a little bit of everything that, ultimately just reveals exactly what Kansas was and is all about. Band's still playing today. Kicking ass, put out a new album of all new material not that long ago. Totally different lineup. Only 2 original members left, but a couple of the guys have been in the band for a long time. A couple new members. I still love them. And Point of No Return, a classic album with some really good deep cuts. So check it out. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on the mighty YouTube. Hope to see you guys real soon with some new content. So till then, take care, be well, and we'll see you.